Welcome into episode number 153 of The Voice Behind the Voice. I'm Sean Aronson, the TV and radio broadcaster for the St. Paul Saints, an independent minor league baseball team in the Twin Cities. Well, a lot going on. It is Monday, April 1st. I have no April Fool's jokes for you, but this is the week of the Final Four here in Minneapolis. So 4 teams will descend upon the Twin Cities area. All the media will be down here. A lesser version of what the Super Bowl was last year. And I can confidently say now that I have my tickets for both the semifinals and the final. So I'm looking forward to that. I will report back next Monday when I record the Open about what it was like to be at the semifinals. Obviously, that night will be the finals. But I'll report back next week on what it's like to be at U.S. Bank Stadium. I have never been there for a sporting event, and what the atmosphere is going to be like. So I'll report back then. This week is also the opening of the minor league baseball season. Not for us. We don't start till May, but affiliated ball starts this week, and I always enjoy this time of the year because so many of the interns, my assistants that have worked under me have gone on to now bigger and better things. I think there are about 6 of them, and definitely the last 5 that have been assistants for me that are on to affiliated ball. Last year, Evan Giddings, he is at AA this year in Erie, where he will be the number 2 broadcaster for I believe it's the Erie Seawolves, so he will be out there. But so many of those people that have been assistants with me out doing what they should be doing with jobs. That is the goal of doing a number 2 position, doing an assistant's position, is to go on to get your own job. So proud of everybody. I wish them all the luck in the world. I believe every game starts on Thursday this week. All the minor league teams start on Thursday. So I will be tuned in to all of them at some point or another around the country to listen in on a couple of innings. And I wish them all the luck in the world. And you hope at some point they continue to move up the ladder and eventually make it to the major leagues or whatever their ending point, wherever they want to be. Speaking of, that leads us into episode number 153 with Chris Fisher of the Oklahoma City Thunder. I've been doing this now for 18 years, going on 19. Only since I've been in St. Paul have I had an intern, an assistant. Never had one before that in Fort Myers or in Allentown. It started here in St. Paul. And at no point have any of those that have been assistants for me gone on to the major leagues or the upper echelon. However, the man that I talked to for this week's episode could have been the first ever to do that. I will state the brief part of this story because we open up the podcast with this. Long story short, Chris Fisher applied to be my intern. I don't know how long ago this was now. We might say it on the podcast, but 2009, I think it was. 2009, 2010, somewhere in that range. And I hired him as my assistant. A few days later, Chris accepted the job, and a few days after accepting the job, he called me back and said, I can't take the position. I just got a number 1 position out in, I believe it was in Oregon. And there were 2 sides to this story. Number 1, I understood it was a number 1 job, and how could you turn down a number 1 job where you are now the guy? Number 2, I was a little bit upset because Chris had accepted this position. I had told all the other finalists they were not getting the job. And so anytime anyone ever takes a job with me, I say, look, you've taken this job. I want to make sure that this is what you want. And they say yes, and I don't expect anyone to ever go back on that. And Chris did. Again, I understood, but I was not happy. And there was an interesting moment. And I didn't remember that. I did not remember who Chris Fisher was. I had no look. This was 100 years ago, and as he told me, you've dealt with a lot of other people since then, but he remembered this. And when we first met, before we sat down for the interview, Chris comes up to me as we're at the hotel, and he says, "Do you remember me?" Which always scares me when people say that, because I have a horrible memory as it is. And I told him no. And he pulled out the email that I sent to him showing expressing my displeasure for him going back. And he said, "Look, I'm not mad at all." He said, "As a matter of fact, I've held on to this forever because it bothered me that I did that to you." And he said, "It eats me up inside." And I always use that as a teaching moment, as a lesson learned. And I joke in the podcast here that let the record show that I have a great ear for talent, and I knew he would go on to bigger and better things. But it's again, the way this business works, and it should never surprise me, but it continues to do so. I will also say this. There are two stories to Chris Fisher, and we tell his stories in two different parts. There is the broadcasting side, which is the first half, and there is a separate side in the second half. And I did this intentionally, and I relate that reason why in the podcast. This is a fascinating story that Chris Fisher has, both on the broadcasting side and on the personal life side of something that happened to him. If you have not subscribed to the podcast, you can do so by going to anywhere you listen to your podcasts. iTunes. Where else can Stitcher? I don't even know all the names of the podcast place you can go to, right? Just wherever you can find a podcast, download this. And then it will come into your little inbox every Tuesday morning. I post these Monday night so that they can go up Tuesday morning at 4 o'clock in the morning, so that when you wake up, the podcast is right there for you. Also, be sure to rate the podcast. Don't do an April Fool's joke and give me like 1 star because you think it's funny, because it's going to stay up there forever. So, if you like it, go ahead and rate it. Also, social media. You can follow us at The Voice BTV on Twitter, on Facebook, facebook.com/TheVoiceBTV. And you can always email me, thevoicebtv@gmail.com. All right, let's get to it. Episode number 153 with Chris Fisher of the Oklahoma City Thunder. JW, you are no joke, my friend. Roll the open.
I accepted your offer and then rescinded about 3 days later because I got another offer from Eugene, the Emeralds, which was the Padres affiliate at the time, to be a number 1. And Eugene just couldn't give me a definitive answer, and so I accepted your job. And Eugene gave me the offer 2 days later, and I had to pull back my commitment to you, which I, to this day, regret and feel very badly about because it put you in a bad position.